that during the week, all stressed out, and you have steam coming out of your ears? Or do you find yourself a victim of bullying? You find yourself feeling depressed throughout the week? Or maybe you do find yourself looking like that, and staring at the computer screen hours on end, looking at videos of cats to satisfy your depression. Well, my question is to you, do you want to know how we can make high school easy for teens? The answer is, we can't. It's impossible. But we can make it easier. How do we do this? How do we make high school easier? The answer is simply through music. Hi, my name is Kendall. We are doing this is my first video. It's a fake idea we're sharing, and this is where I will make music simpler and making high school simpler for you. About me, I love music. Music is my livelihood. It's played for my entire life. I've been playing piano for about 9 years, clarinet for 5, and guitar for 3. This is a decent statement from a music therapist doctor. I really like it. Music allows teens to explore and deal with upcoming challenges, sexual fantasies, and feelings. It's pretty much what teens struggle with, and it's something you can deal with. Music helps guide through the stressful years. A third of American teens own an iPod, according to a survey done in 2006. 68% own a social networking account, Facebook, Twitter, or MySpace. We watch and listen to an average of 4 to 5 hours of music every day, whether that's walking to school, listening to an iPod, or driving in the car. It's something we always do every day. Teens and music are peas in a pot. We've been together since World War II. I'll spend the next few minutes of my presentation describing how we've been peas in a pot. Warning, dancing outbursts may occur during the rest of this presentation. To start off, we're going to start off talking about the 1950s. We got this lovely man here. He was Elvis. He's the first dreamy boy that you see girls have on their walls. What Elvis brought with the introduction of rock and roll was a way to break the social tensions of post-World War II and Cold War scare. Everybody's sitting there, the Russians are going to bomb us, nukes. And teens were in need of a way to find their social identity and break away from that. And this is where you start to see teens and dancing become an identity. Now, go back. This is a little sample of Elvis' music. When you hear the music, it's something, a social identity of the 50s. You hear this music, you automatically, it's the 50s, Elvis, dancing, parties. Now you go to the 60s, and it's the British invasion. We got these guys, the Beatles, making their way onto every poster and every American teenage girl's wall. And that's where you start to see the introduction of pop tunes, and something that, as pop tunes are basically the popular tunes of the day. The Beatles, you got Twist and Shout, State, you just got all these different bands and songs that are popular among teenagers. While the Beatles ruled the major scene, they were on the newspapers and everything. You had Hendrix in the background singing with his introduction of rock and roll. And this is where kind of that separates teenagers. You got the rock and rolls and you got the Beatles. And yes, that is two different categories. What the Beatles and Hendrix both brought to the music scene during the 60s was a fast-paced tempo and music to keep up with the changing times. If you know anything about the 60s, there was always something going on every day. A war, something, invasion, genocide, just anything. It's terrible times. But teens needed this fast music to keep up with the fast-changing times. Here's a little sample of the Beatles' Twist and Shout. a lot of feel-good music came out in the time period, and what you hear is this social tension breaking down for calmness and fast-paced music, so teens can dance. It's all on YouTube if you want to go back and see some more. Now we move on to the 70s. With the gods of rock, with Led Zeppelin. This is where you start to see teenage fan girls drooling over these guys. I mean, look at them, they're gorgeous. And you know, their shirts all untucked, and they're playing. So you got this heavy rock and roll sound, and this is where you start to see music become a major part. This is the decade where you see music and teens start to be grouped together. Rock ruled the scene with Led Zeppelin and The Who, but you did have disco in the background at the beginning of the rise due to the cheapness of the disco, because a lot of disco was recorded on records instead of live bands. So clubs like dancing clubs would use those to have cheaper music to provide for all night dances. And this is where you start to see teens copy Led Zeppelin, or they start to do what the favorite bands would do in order to have a cultural identity. And then here's a little sample of Led Zeppelin's Immigrant song. As you can imagine, a lot of parents did not like this now because it was different. It wasn't what you would normally hear from the 50s with the Benny Goodman and the jazz and classical. This is what you start hearing this music. This is where you hear teenage music. This is something we can call their own. Now we're on to the 80s. And ladies, I know you want that hairstyle. That thing came out of the 80s, right? You got disco and pop, a lot of one-hit wonders, a lot of good, feel-good music that just makes you get up and dance. Crazy outfits. CDs and MTV were a big part of the 80s. If it wasn't for MTV, we probably wouldn't have a lot of the music we have today. Because MTV does stand for music television. I know it doesn't stand for that today, but music television. This is where you go to hear your daily dose of music. Teens were encouraged to be themselves, and dancing was huge. It's called a safety dance, if you will. There's something you want to dance to. You leave your friends behind, and you don't have to worry about it. If you want to talk about dancing movies, one of the biggest things that came out of the era you get dance movies like Footloose, where you have Kevin Bacon, he's a teenager, and he uses music to express his anger against society. Then you have another dance movie, Dirty Dancing, and that's another where Jennifer Grey found out to use dancing to combat what her parents did not want her to do. Dancing was her thing. It wasn't the whole teenage thing. Dancing was an outlet for teenagers to use to express themselves. When they get to the 90s, I don't know about the 90s, but something kind of smells, you know what I mean. Nirvana was the champion of teens. What happened during the 1990s, Nirvana pretty much ruled the scene. They were singing about songs about how teenagers were oppressed during the times, how student protest was. It's basically society versus teen. That's what Nirvana's saying about. That's what. And Nirvana was the key ingredient of teenage society. Now, rap made its way onto the scene during the 90s as well. Now, no blues. A lot of songs saying open about sexuality. Because you have a lot of these teens coming up, making their own music. They want to, sexuality is one of those things that most teenagers don't know about. They want to know more. So what do? They write into a song. They express their feelings to that. A new decade. Now, this decade is marked by big business and music. Music has become more of a business these days. Quality of music goes way down, if you haven't noticed, compared to what happened in the 50s and 60s. But we don't know what's next. That was a big history of how music and teens are entwined together. Now we're going to go on to how we can use music to help combat stress drugs. Music therapy. It's one of the most commonly used music therapies around the world. Used mainly among troubled teens. Actually has a 90% success rate. It's used all around the world. It's used to treat anything from depression to physical anger and violence, and commonly paired with physical therapy. Subcribe. He's a Finland music therapist. He's had 20 years of clinical music therapy. He's a guitarist, and you saw his thesis statement at the beginning of the presentation. Music allows teens to explore and deal with upcoming challenges, sexual fantasies, and feelings. What I want to be explaining to you how this 20 years of musical therapy has resulted with a 95% success rate in clinical trials. He had 3 stages of interest. He had 3 stages for his treatment: interest, learning, and improvisation. I will be going through each step of what he did during that time and what he found out. Teens learn what music others listen to, and they follow that same music. So you call it the sheep effect, if you will. You've all seen that one music video on Facebook, and then you follow this, and then at least a different video, and soon enough you got your new favorite band. You learn nothing but the basics. What Carol would do, he would teach kids how to play like guitar, for example, and then you move on to the next stage, called the improvisational stage. What he would make the kids play with their own, the basics they knew, and they would create songs and help combat how they're feeling. This is a success story I thought was really cool. Tina was a young girl. She was the only girl in a family of 7 guys and her dad. This family was very violent. So naturally, she grew up to become a very violent person. She had no friends. She basically had no future. Then she went to musical therapy. In the end, what she ended up doing, she learned how to play guitar. And she played guitar with a really extremist, violent voice attitude, kind of like a heavy metal band. But after a few years in this musical therapy, she ended up learning how to play acoustic guitar. And she becomes an astounding guitarist, and she goes back and she goes out and she graduates college with a degree in engineering, I believe, after 2 years in clinical music therapy. Music was a way she used to vent her feelings about how she felt towards other people. There are some cons to music. 20% of American teens have hearing loss. Headphones these days let a lot of background noise in. You guys kind of agree? You ever have those headphones that never quite see to get all the music into it? Yeah, yours? Well, it's kind of counterproductive because that lets hearing loss in. Over time, most teenagers experience some sort of hearing loss. It's actually worth the money for noise-canceling headphones. Because trust me, I have hearing aids. Hearing aids are expensive. You don't want hearing aids. It's worth the money to buy some noise-canceling headphones. But another way you can combat this is not to use your iPod over 60% volume. You see there, that's about how 60% is if you were scrolling through and you turn your iPad up. What this guy, Chekro, found out was he had this little chart. Like 10%, 50%, you can listen to your iPod all day if you want to. 60%, you should only listen to your iPod for about 18 hours. Then it goes down, if you have your iPod on full blast and you're listening to headphones, only listen to 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, you start to experience hearing loss, ringing in your ears, and it's not good. So, let's kind of sum everything up. How do we make music easier? Try taking advantage of all the music that's out there. We live in a day and age where you can go out and listen to any type of music. Music from China and backwoods of Mandarin County. Instead of rap all the time, try listening to jazz and classical. Pick up an instrument. Even if you only play Mary Had a Little Lamb, it's still worth it to learn how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb. And play Mary Had a Little Lamb different ways. You can play it how a jazz person would play it like Beethoven would, or play it like Led Zeppelin would. Just sit and listen. Go home, sit on your couch, just plug your iPod in and listen to some peaceful music. And that stimulates your brain flow, it makes your heartbeat calm down. Overall, it makes you feel better. Thanks for watching.